Rebecca, thanks for joining us today. You started your career really in a corporate construct, moving from a couple of very big high-profile companies, Rogers Media, Skvorc, KPMG, a long history of corporate, and then you made a leap into the startup world. What was the driver for you to do that?
I had a mentor, someone that I used to work for when I was around 20 years old. Dan Wilson, one of the partners at KPMG in Toronto, just called me up. He knew I was at a place in my career. I'd been at Rogers Media for 2.5 years, loving it. But I had gotten to a place where I wasn't as excited anymore, and he was really into the tech space. And I'd worked for him in tech, and he just thought I'd be a fit for David Ossip, who had just been acquired by Ceridian at Skvorc. And he called me up and said that David was looking for a finance lead. And
so how did you have that conversation with Dan, though?
Well, the great thing is Dan is phenomenal at keeping in touch with his mentees. And so it was actually a really easy conversation. So he literally just called me and asked if I was interested. And because I had such a long history with Dan, it was a very quick, easy conversation. He just said that I thought we would be a good fit, and I trusted him.
And Dan, after making that referral, did you continue the relationship with him even though you were no longer at KPMG?
Oh, absolutely. So I worked for Dan last maybe in 2006, and Dan has continued to network me, introduce me to new people to this day. So even today, he takes me to dinners that are actually targeted more at VCs, founders. I'm usually the only finance person there. I'm often one of the only females there. And he has continued to make sure that I have a voice in this space. Speaking
of financial services and what you're doing at Wave and your role at Wave today, what an incredible meteoric rise that company has had in terms of customer acquisition, all that transformation that's happening so quickly. What lessons have you taken out of that?
Wave has been an incredible ride. So I think one of the biggest things is, as you think of, if someone's interested in getting into the tech space, you have to know that it's not just up and to the right. You hear people talk about that, you read about the Twitters that seem like they were just up and to the right, or the Squares, they aren't. And so we've had our ups and downs, and so what you hear about being that meteoric rise isn't actually exactly how it happened.
Right, sure.
Right?
It's what people see on the outside.
Exactly.
But inside is the roller coaster.
And that's okay, and that's what I think that's the biggest takeaway, and that people have to be comfortable with that if they decide that they want to make that transition into the tech space. They have to be adaptable to change. It's not going to be exactly up and to the right. There are going to be bumps and crevices along the way, and that's okay. When
you were in such a stable environment at a place like Rogers Media or KPMG, going into Wave, how was your personal journey? That transition is,
it's something I actually wish people would, we would spend time, and we should make an effort to help people make that transition into that space. Because you go from an environment that is very structured, you know exactly what you're doing day after day. Generally, even if the company tells you your day is different, it's really not. It's pretty same. You move into an environment where you have the ability to make decisions, and actually your founders generally want you to make decisions so that we can move as quickly as possible. That was probably one of the hardest transitions that I made. It took me about 4 months to realize that I had the ability
to make a call.
Just make the call and move on. And the other piece was, at a big company, usually you'll have a conversation with an executive, and the conversation is, we'll meet next week. When you're at a startup, it's let's meet tomorrow.
5 minutes,
And that meeting that would have been 2 hours, you get it done in 24 minutes. And if you can't get it done in 24 minutes, so the mindset has to change, and people have to be willing to make that change. And some people find that incredibly motivating.
Some people can't make that transition.
Some people don't make that transition. But a lot of people, I think, who don't think they can make the transition, actually do make the transition, and they do it really well. So you have to be willing to grow. It's a bit of a growth mindset, and if you're willing to think that through, talk to other people that are in the space, I think anybody can make that transition.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, and not a lot of people make the transition well. Some people do. Can you think of an example in the Wave experience where someone didn't quite make it?
I wouldn't say I've seen it specifically with Wave, but I definitely have had colleagues, and I've talked to colleagues who haven't made that transition well. And usually it's driven by the fact that they aren't really able to move quickly. So that ability to be scrappy. So you're at a big company and you're used to your desk being multi-millions of dollars, and you need to move to a company like Wave, and your marketing budget is a couple $100,000, if that. That is a very different mindset, and some people don't make that transition well.